This camera technique is called a dolly zoom. The lens is zooming out from a telephoto to a wide-angle field of view, while the camera tracks in to keep the subject the same size in the frame. Here it's being used by director Steven Spielberg in his 1975 film Jaws. This is the moment the film's protagonist, Brody, realises that a shark has attacked a young boy swimming in the water. This shift from a narrower to a wider field of view separates Brody from the background and from his wife. It has an isolating effect. The features of his face become more exaggerated, reflecting the disorientation we can feel when thrown into a state of panic. Spielberg is using the lens to play a key part in communicating Brody's thoughts and feelings as he comes to the horrible realization that he should have closed the beach. This scene demonstrates an important factor in your choice of lens, that focal length affects the psychological impact of your shot. Your choice of focal length these days is more important than it was in the past. It's more important today than it was 30 years ago, when it was more important than it was 30 years before that. Let me take you through why this is and what it means for you as a photographer. Advancing technology has made photography more accessible and therefore more commonplace. But a bigger effect is the impact advancing technology has had on television and cinema. Home TVs have got bigger, adopted cinematic aspect ratios, and production value has massively improved for TV series, to the point where a well-shot TV drama will often be visually indistinguishable from a cinema-released film. And this means that most people will be exposed to this language on a daily basis. The result of this is that our society has developed an acute, intuitive understanding of the visual language of cinema. Now, while film cinematography and photography are very different beasts in a lot of ways, there are also some aspects that unite them, and one of those is how we as an audience psychologically derive meaning from different focal lengths. In his 2017 film, Call Me By Your Name, the director Luca Guadagnino made the conscious choice to shoot the whole film using only a Cooke S4 35mm lens. In interviews, he states that the choice to exclusively use such a neutral focal length was to give the feel of the human eye. The resulting effect of this is one that removes the barrier of the concept of focal length for the audience. We are not so much viewing the narrative through the lens of the director, but being placed into the environment with the characters. When we choose a lens to shoot with, we are making a decision about the psychological value the images we take with that lens will hold. A wide-angle lens will exaggerate the perception of depth, but shooting close with a wide-angle lens will give the viewer a unique connection with the subject. As the subject will appear isolated from the elements surrounding them, any movement towards the camera, such as leaning in, will be vastly exaggerated. We become part of the subject's world. We are close, maybe too close. There is a tension between the viewer and the subject, and it can become uncomfortable. Maybe we're intruding into someone's world. Cinematographer Roger Deakins is probably best known for his work with the Coen brothers. Together they have created a distinctive cinematic style. Deakins frequently uses a 27mm wide-angle lens for shots of single characters. His preference for often showing just single characters in the frame at any one time gives these shots a portrait-like quality. The wide lens gives us not only a heightened sense of both dramatic and comedic tension when used close up, but when moved slightly back, the wider field of view allows us to see the subject within their environment. We get a contextual portrait of that character, and this tells us more about them than a closer lens would give us. A standard lens, usually somewhere around 35 to 50mm on a 35mm stills camera, is so called because it most closely represents what we see with the human eye. And while our field of visual awareness is actually a lot larger, what a standard lens does is capture a similar area to what we call human foveal vision, which is the area of detail we can see clearly and sharply with our eyes, and therefore what we perceive as our field of view. For this reason, we can use a standard lens to reduce the psychological barrier that a more dramatic focal length creates. Presenting the subject of our shot in a way that more closely represents how we see with our eyes creates a feeling of honesty and of reality. We can be more subtle in the way we frame and highlight a scene, leading the viewer to make a more intuitive connection with the subject matter, rather than a forced one. It's also worth noting that mobile phone lenses commonly provide a field of view not dissimilar to a standard lens. For this reason, we're very used to seeing the world represented in this way, and as most people use their phone cameras to take pictures of things rather than to create an aesthetically pleasing composition, when we use a standard lens to compose an image, any consideration given to composition will make our images stand out a little more, while simultaneously reinforcing the idea that the subject of the image has some importance, some reason to be photographed. A telephoto lens isolates subjects in a very different way to a wide lens. Distance becomes compressed and we get a flattened out feeling to the perspective. But from a cultural context, we are used to seeing a telephoto lens field of view used to photograph things that we can't get close to, such as wildlife, celebrities, athletes in mid-performance, fleeting moments containing rare things of value. Formal portraits are often frequently shot with longer focal lengths, as the compressed perspective is perceived as being more flattering on people's features. When we use a long lens, we are not part of the shot. We are not there with the subject. We are voyeurs looking through the lens onto someone else's world. Because this is how we most commonly understand the telephoto field of view, when we take that look and apply it to something else, a portrait of a stranger on the street for example, we add a sense of formality, of grandeur and gravitas, something that a wider lens wouldn't give us. The stranger is no longer one of us, just a passerby we can interact with as an equal. Their status has been elevated. Using a long lens to isolate them makes the shot say, "This person is important." Choosing the right focal length is much more than just creating a flattering portrait or being able to fit everything you want to into your frame. Your choice of lens changes the dynamic of your image and the psychological meaning that your audience will derive from it. When choosing a lens, think about how you want your audience to feel. Why are you shooting what you are? What are you saying with it? Use focal length to subtly communicate your message to the viewer, because changing focal length can completely change the whole meaning of your shot. So this is the sponsored bit, but bear with me because I have something for you. So I got a lot of comments on my last few videos saying that my audio quality was somewhat lacking, and audio has never really been my strong point. So I've hopefully tackled that by taking a course on Skillshare, and I learned a lot about audio production and post-production, and I put that into effect for this video, so hopefully the audio quality will be significantly improved from before. The Skillshare is the sponsor of this video, and it's an online learning community designed for creators. They have over 25,000 courses on things from graphic design, things like business that you may not have thought of, drawing, photography, all sorts of things. You can learn how to pose a model, you can learn how to light a portrait, you can learn techniques for advanced Photoshop. It's a really great resource. All the classes are professional and understandable, and an annual subscription is less than $10 a month. But the first 500 people to sign up using the link below this video will get a 2-month trial of Skillshare absolutely free. So if there's a skill you're wanting to learn, maybe something you're just curious about, maybe something that's going to help further your career, then just click the link below and use the 2-month trial to try it out. It's a really great resource. I highly recommend you do it. You've got nothing to lose, so just click the link and do it.